Charlotte at 6.
Charlotte at 6. I'm Mark Harrison, WBT's Daily News Magazine. All right, take a listen to this. Oh, yeah, if you're a parent, you know exactly what that is. That is the sound of baby's heartbeat inside mom. You usually hear it when the mother is about 8 weeks along in the pregnancy. Well, now Ohio has passed a law that says you cannot do an abortion once you hear that heartbeat. It's called the Heartbeat Bill, and if the governor signs it, the question is, what will the courts do? Byron Henry's a constitutional lawyer, arguing cases a few times before the Supreme Court, joins us on the line. Byron, this would be the earliest ban on abortions, the strictest law in the country, right?
As far as I can tell, other than an outright ban on abortions, this would be about as early as I've ever seen one, assuming the science that I've seen reported is correct. Sometimes there's some dispute as to when a viability, when a heartbeat is detected. But from what I've read, it looks like it is 6 to 8 weeks into a pregnancy, and that would about as far back in the pregnancy as I've seen.
So what you're thinking, would this get by the Supreme Court? They don't seem to be in a mood to restrict abortions in some of their recent decisions.
Well, the issue, there's two issues here. One deals with just abortions generally, such as the Texas abortion bill that was up, House Bill 2 out of Texas, that was decided at the end of last term by the Supreme Court, and that dealt with all abortions, and that dealt with basically closing clinics with respect to safety regulations, which the Supreme Court found had minimal safety benefits, but
Correct.
Basically would create a substantial burden to a large percentage of women in the state of Texas who already have a hard time finding open clinics within driving distance.
Right.
So that's basically a substantial burden to abortions that no one disagrees are available. This is a little bit different. This is basically moving the clock back on when abortions are legal, not trying to make it difficult for women to obtain abortions that we know are legal. So, you know, you've had some argument that even under Roe, you can have regulations past the first trimester. The first trimester is around 13 weeks. So this actually pushes the limit even further back, banning abortion before the end of the first trimester. So this is kind of a new type of restriction because it's an outright ban as opposed to just regulations on how abortions are performed or obtained. So we don't really know what the court thinks about this, but it would take a substantial rewriting or overruling of a huge portion of the Roe v. Wade decision in order to sustain this law.
So, which means that probably the Supreme Court, at least as it's now constituted, would not be likely to go along with this.
Not only as it's presently constituted, but even if President-elect Trump succeeds in getting his preferred nominee to the United States Supreme Court confirmed, and that is a conservative in the mold of the late Justice Anthony Scalia, that would just return the court to the same balance with respect to abortion that had been prevalent on the court for the past 10 years or so. So what we'd end up with Justice Anthony Kennedy still the deciding vote in abortion decisions, and of course he was in the majority, striking down the Texas abortion law in last term. So we would have to lean towards thinking that under the current court, even with a new appointee by President-elect Trump that is considered conservative, we would think that the odds would be against the court ultimately upholding such a law.
Of course, the interesting part of this is that after all these years, the abortion battle is nowhere near being settled, is it?
No, it's nowhere near being settled at all. As states pass new laws, I don't know if you heard of a new law in Texas that has not been actually proposed because the legislature's not in session, but the rumor is a bill has been filed which would require cremation or burial of fetal remains from abortion. So there is a different type of abortion regulation which deals with after the abortion, what happens to the fetal remains. So there is a number of questions that continue to come up in this area of jurisprudence and are still unanswered.
And, of course, as long as it's such a sensitive subject with so many, I don't see this being settled anytime soon, regardless of how the court holds on some of these individual state laws.
I think you're right, and the reason being, and Justice Scalia had a lot to say about this when he was alive, is that as long as a court is going to be in charge of measuring whether or not something's reasonable or not, and not a legislature, you're going to have these types of issues come up ad nauseum. Basically, the conservative view of this, unlike what most people think, is not to overturn Roe v. Wade and ban abortion, but the conservative take on this from a Justice Scalia or perhaps a President-elect Trump nominee would be to overturn Roe v. Wade and return the issue to the states to be decided on a state-by-state basis. So it's unlikely, even if Roe v. Wade was overturned, that abortion would be effectively banned in all 50 states. It would be a state-by-state issue, and some states which favor abortion rights, such as California or Vermont or Delaware, would have broad abortion rights and ability to seek abortions, and other more conservative states it would be more difficult. But as long as a court's going to measure it, you're going to have every single one of these cases, case-specific questions. The court's going to have to do a balancing act and figure out whether or not the abortion regulation passes muster or not.
All right, Byron. Thanks, Byron Henry, constitutional lawyer on Ohio's new heartbeat law. When you hear the baby's heartbeat, the law in Ohio says you cannot do an abortion. The bill still has to be signed by the governor there.